So our program tonight is a talk by Christopher Calonje on 15 years of birding for conservation in Colombia. Chris is a graduate of Humboldt State University. He has led hundreds of tours in all regions of Colombia since he founded Colombia Birdwatch in 2009. Many of you probably remember that Colombia was involved in a 50-year civil war. The end of that war brought peace to the area and opened the country back up to tourism in the 21st century. Colombia boasts the largest number of bird species in the world, close to 2,000 species. And he will be speaking about how bird tourism has supported both conservation and local communities in rural areas of Colombia. Chris devotes his time to various nonprofit conservation groups and local communities in Colombia, and also runs the Araucana Lodge in southwestern Colombia near the city of Cali. This lodge is owned by his family on a 30-acre property and has been touted as one of the best birding lodges in the country. If you have questions during the talk, please type them into the chat and we'll ask them for you at the end. It is with great pleasure that I turn the program over to Chris Calonje. Chris, you're on. And either you're muted or we're not hearing you.
Sorry about that.
There you go.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, Judy, for the nice introduction, and thanks everybody for making it tonight. We're a couple hours ahead of you in Colombia, so it's been a long day for me, but excited to tell you a little bit more about my experience working with bird tourism in Colombia. I recognize a few of you on the list of people that are watching. Um, I know we've had several members of Morro Coast visit Araucana Lodge, so it's nice to see that some of the folks that have been here are actually joining the talk today. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. I also want to thank Juan Jose Arango. Part of the presentation today is to show you guys some eye candy of the different species that can be observed in Colombia. Juan Jose is a good friend and a great photographer who very kindly has allowed me to use his pictures for my presentation today. I start with this bird. This bird is a tooth-billed hummingbird. If you guys look closely at the bill, it's the only hummingbird in the world that has a serrated bill. As you may know, hummingbirds rely on nectar that they get from flowers, but they need to also take in some protein. So you'll see a lot of hummingbirds are out catching bugs and things like that. And this one from the Pacific lowlands of Colombia has this unique adaptation in its bill to help him with catching those mosquitoes and those bugs. Okay, so let's get started. This, for those of you that don't know, Colombia is written Colombia, not Columbia. Many people make this mistake when they spell it, but it's Colombia with an O. We're the only country in South America that's connected to Central America, and one of the most diverse countries in the world in terms of butterflies, birds, plants, and this is due to various reasons. One of them is that we have 5 very different ecosystems found in a relatively small area. Colombia comprises about 10% of the area of the United States. A big chunk of this is in the south. We have a huge portion of the Amazon rainforest. Eastern Colombia consists of a vast grassland that connects to Venezuela called the Orinoquia. We have a long stretch on the Pacific coast, which is called the Chocó bioregion. It's one of the rainiest places on Earth. And to the north, we have what we call the Caribbean area. So we're the only country in South America to have a coast on both the Caribbean and the Pacific Ocean. And where about 85% of Colombia's population lives is in the Andes region. This is in the center of Colombia. And what makes this fascinating is this is the view looking from the south of Colombia. The Andes Mountains are one of the longest mountain ranges in the world, and it basically consists of one major chain throughout all of South America, from the south of Chile. But when it gets to Colombia, it forks into three very distinct ranges. So in Colombia, we have the Western Andes, the Central Andes, and the Eastern Andes, and two very large interandean valleys between the Western and Central and the Central and Eastern Andes. We also have the highest coastal mountain range on the planet, which is the Santa Marta Mountains. This is totally isolated from the Andes, um, which makes it like a little island. Uh, you know, it has a very high degree of endemism. You can find 22 different species of endemic birds on this mountain range. So this also adds to the incredible diversity of birds in Colombia. Okay, let's talk a little bit about um, bird diversity. Um, we're number one in species of birds in the world. And this number keeps growing as we have more splits and more new species actually being discovered. We also, as biologists are able to get out into the field, we're also finding a lot of new records for Colombia. So Colombia has more than 90 endemic species. Um, in the last 20 years, 20 new species have been discovered in Colombia. And this has been growing a little bit because of the fact that biologists are now able to go explore areas that 20, 30 years ago were literal war zones. So it's a special time to be a biologist in Colombia because um 20 years ago you were stuck learning about everything in books. Now you're able to go out and explore the country and do research and discover new species. So Colombia has about 20% of the world's species, and we only occupy 0.8% of the world's landmass. So just think about that number, 20% of the world's species and less than 1% of the world's landmass. We have more species of birds than Europe and North America combined, and uh, we have over 160 important bird areas that have been accredited by BirdLife International. This is a purple mantlish tanager from the Chocó region of Colombia, the Pacific region. Uh, One of the most stunning tanagers in my opinion, and beautifully photographed by Juan Jose Arango. Okay, so I want to tell you guys a little bit about myself. Um, I was born and raised in Colombia. My mom and dad actually met at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo. So as a kid, I grew up going back there. I still have some family there. Have some family in California. but in 1997, I graduated from high school here in Colombia. I went to an American school, and this was a very difficult time in Colombia in terms of the violence that was going on, the civil war, the cartels. So I actually was drafted by the military when I was actually 17, and decided uh, I would move to the US because joining the military was not in my plans, especially with the situation that was going on in Colombia. So, as many Colombians did, and I was lucky enough to be able to leave the country. I did that. Um, had a great time at Humboldt State University, and um, um, moved to Oregon to work in environmental consulting after graduating from Humboldt. So a little bit of history on the political situation and what happened in Colombia that caused this. It's one of the longest running civil wars in world history, at least in recent world history. The FARC was created in the 1950s. It was originally a political movement that took to arms to achieve its mission. It was a communist group. It was backed by the Soviet Union, and their main ideology was to work on land reform. A very small percentage of the Colombian population at that time, and still a little bit now, owned a huge percentage of Colombian land. So the idea of the FARC was, we want to give back some of this land to the people that work it. And there's a lot of land that, um, owned by very wealthy people that isn't put to good use. Uh, you know, we have all this land, let's put it to good use. Let's give it to the people that have been working the land for many years and that know how to work the land to produce food. Um, so this was okay, but originally the FARC was financed by the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union fell, they needed to find new sources of financing. Their first two choices was kidnapping and extortion. This is how they began to receive funding. They needed to buy weapons and fight against the government. And um, this was okay until they figured out how very uh, profitable drug trafficking is. So during the early 80s, late 80s, early 90s, the FARC got into the business of drug trafficking, a very profitable business, and they started gaining immense power in Colombia, to where they were pretty close of pretty close to take over the country at one point. Um, but in 2002, this was while I was already living in the States, Colombians elected President Alvaro Uribe. He ran on a platform uh, basically to go after the FARC. He said, we need to stop being on the defensive against these guys. We need to be on the offensive. So his father had been kidnapped and murdered by the FARC. That was one of his reasons why he wanted to do this. And of course, because they were causing so many troubles in the country. And he won the election. He was a very popular president because he started giving the Colombians more freedom to travel in rural areas that were once occupied by the FARC. He was able to change the constitution, was able to get elected for a second term, which wasn't allowed before. And his defense minister was Juan Manuel Santos, who was also instrumental in this very tactical offensive against the FARC, also with help from the US government. Juan Manuel Santos actually won the presidency after Álvaro Uribe left. This was in 2010. And as soon as he won the presidency, he realized the Colombian government was in a position to decimate the FARC, but also to begin a peace dialogue with them. So um, that was his decision, and he started looking and talking with the FARC. They had meetings in Cuba, and started this the beginning of the peace process. And Juan Manuel Santos actually won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2016 because of his work in getting this peace treaty signed with the FARC. The treaty was finalized in 2017. However, you know, tourism was an industry that was a new industry in Colombia because it was way too dangerous to come visit during so many decades. But when Alba Uribe and Juan Manuel Santos started gaining ground against the FARC in about 2006, 2007, the country began to open up for bird tourism. So my involvement with bird tourism in Colombia started in 2008. I was visiting Cali, the city I grew up in, during December, and I was driving up to my family's property, a property where we now have the lodge that my grandfather purchased in 1957. We have a vacation home here, and I stop at a little store to get a six-pack of beer. And I saw a sign on the wall that was advertising birding tours. I studied environmental science at Humboldt, so this kind of caught my attention. There was a phone number. I called them up. Turns out it was a nonprofit organization called Mapalina, and their mission was to train the local kids in the area where our property is to become birding guides. They realized the potential that bird tourism could have in Colombia. They realized that we needed bird guides in the country if we were going to have birders coming to the country. And they realized that this was a great opportunity for kids growing up in these rural areas that were at one time war zones, a great opportunity to find work in what they love and actually make a pretty decent living without having to go find a job in the city. So I got together with Mapalina. I knew nothing about birding, but I was living in the States, in Oregon. So, I sat down with them and I said, hey, I know nothing about this, but I can help market Colombia as a birding destination in the US because I live there. So, me and the director, Carlos Mario Wagner, uh, took about 2 months, started traveling around Colombia and started designing. uh, we didn't really know what we were doing, but we just started traveling. There was already some reserves set up. There was already guides in some parts of Colombia. So just meeting people, birding, taking bird pictures, looking at the different lodging options, and basically trying to design a route that we could market to birders from the US. And that's when I founded my company, Colombia Birdwatch. One reason being I thought it was a good business opportunity, but another reason being I knew it would be a great opportunity um, for Colombians to find a job doing something that's good for the environment, good for the people, and good for the people that come visit us. So I came back to the States with, a bunch of bird pictures, everything, and started contacting different Audubon Society chapters, different universities, different nature clubs, and offering to do talks about Colombia. First one I did was in Klamath Falls, where I lived, and after that presentation, I had 5 ladies that attended that were interested in coming to Colombia. And in 2009, we did our first tour in Colombia. And this is a picture on the last day of that tour. Okay, so I want to tell you a little bit about Audubon's involvement in the whole bird tourism situation in Colombia. Uh, I think Audubon has done a really great job in promoting bird tourism in Colombia. In 2013, I met John Myers. He was the International Alliance's project director for Audubon in Washington, D.C. And he came to Colombia with the idea to build a network of birding trails. Very similar to what Carlos Mario and I were doing, at a very small scale when we started traveling around the country. And Audubon had done this in various other countries, in Panama, I think in Costa Rica, and they had been very successful at it. What was really great about trying to do this in Colombia was that Colombia was new to tourism. So it was a great opportunity to start these projects on a clean slate and also be able to learn from the experiences of other countries in developing these birding trails. What does Audubon do when they create a birding trail? They come in, they design the route, they look at the lodgings, they started training guides, English classes for the guides, because you can be a great birder and know your birds, but if you can't communicate with your clients, you have issues. So their first project was the Northern Columbia Birding Trail. This was in the Santa Marta Mountains, and it was a 2-year project. They trained a lot of the guides that actually now work for me, so I'm very grateful for that. And one of the main points was marketing these birding trails to the different Audubon chapters. The hopes is we created this trail. We'll tell the people in the Audubon members in the U.S. about it. They'll come to Colombia. They'll go birding. They'll leave economic resources in the country, and these resources help in terms of conservation of the different birding areas in Colombia. So Audubon has now done 5 of these birding trails in Colombia, which is pretty outstanding and has been instrumental in developing bird tourism in the country. In 2015, me and Carlos Mario and I, the director of Mapalina, the nonprofit that I've been working with for many years, decided to launch the Colombia Bird Fair. This was 2015. The idea was to tell the world that Colombia was open for bird tourism business, have people come to Cali. We based it out of the city of Cali, have, field trips and lectures and talk about conservation. And it was a very neat experience. The Bird Fair just had its 10th version this year. And we got a lot of exposure. Right? We got some time on CNN. We, we were able to help to put Colombia on the map as a birding destination. And here, let me look at my notes again. So that was 2015. In 2016, Audubon Society with USAID and several Colombian conservation nonprofits, with my friend John Myers, decided to do a study on the economic benefits of the peace process in Colombia based on bird tourism. So some of you may have remembered this was probably 2015. They sent out surveys to all the different Audubon members in the US asking them, would you be interested in come to Colombia? If so, how much would you spend on a birding tour? What's how much would you be willing to spend in a day? The idea was to see what economic impact this brand new peace treaty could have in Colombia in terms of bird tourism. And they call this study, peace is a lot more than doves. So it was a little play on words on peace and on doves because they symbolize peace. And this study was instrumental in getting the Colombian government to look at bird tourism as a strategy, not only for conservation, or more importantly, because of the economic benefits. A lot of times you can get things done a lot quicker if there's an economic benefit to it than just a conservation benefit to it. So again, another great example of how Audubon did such a great job in Colombia to promote bird tourism. So 2017 comes around. We had a couple years earlier inherited the property that my grandfather bought. It's located in a great spot. It's very close to a lot of great birding spots. So we decided to build Araucana Lodge as a family. Dad, mom, brother, sister, we all sat down, came up with a design, came up with ideas. My sister and my wife decorated it. They worked on the menus, and we got the place built in about a year. Opened up 6 months before the pandemic, which was a little rough. But we're able also to develop a birding route based from the lodge. A lot of the folks that are on the presentation today have done this specific route. And I kind of want to give you a little tour of this birding route based out of Araucana Lodge. Colombia is so diverse and has so many places to go birding. It'd be like a 5-hour presentation if we were to talk about all the different places you could go in Colombia. We have people that come to Colombia and come back 3, 4, 5 times, and you always be able to visit a new area and see new birds. Okay, if any of you get on YouTube, I recommend a great show called The Birders Show. It's done by my friends Chris Bell and Diego Calderon. Very funny, entertaining show that visits different birding areas in Colombia and talks about, basically birding in Colombia. But it's a very entertaining show. You can find it on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. I'm going to share a little 2-minute video with you guys that talks about Araucana Lodge and the birding around here. So let me see. Can I do share? Yeah, share. No. Okay.
I'm here in the Colombian Western Andes at Araucana Lodge. For my money, one of the best birding lodges in all of Colombia. Certainly one of the most luxurious. Let's go take a look inside. So the first thing you see when you come into Araucana Lodge is this beautiful, really well-lit reception. There's loads of big windows here, beautiful light, lots of plants, bird-friendly windows, as you can see here, these little white dots to avoid bird collisions, and the dining area. Most of the food here is produced locally, the vegetables, the eggs, the coffee, all organic, locally grown, just in the front garden of the house. A really nice touch. So one of the things that really captured my imagination when I first arrived at Araucana is this incredible landscaping. The design is beautiful. The house is set around this wonderful open garden. One of the things that's best about this hotel is the light. So Araucana Lodge has 10 rooms, can probably sleep up to about 25 people. Lots of birding groups choose to stay here because, well, the location is unbelievable. A lot of the rooms have these really nice little terraces and balconies in front where you can hang out, have your coffee, and do some birding. There's some nice birds just right here. Apart from these beautiful facilities, one of the things that makes Araucana Lodge so special is its location. We're no distance away from the Pacific lowland jungles of San Cipriano. Cali is less than an hour away, the cloud forests of kilometer 18, Doña Dora's place. You really are right in the middle, in the heart of some of the best birding in all of Colombia, in all of South America, staying here.
So the property has a bird list of over 200 species, so mind-boggling avian diversity. We started as a family project, and we really try to focus on healthy, delicious food, quality service, and a very personal experience for our guests.
Quite frankly, there's almost nowhere else in Colombia that offers this level of luxury with such an incredible birding location.
Okay. First slide. Okay, so I guess that was a pretty good summary with some nice video of Araucana Lodge. Um, you know, I'll tell you a little bit more about the property. We're on 30 acres of land. About 65% of the land is in a pre-montane forest that we've been conserving as a family since my grandfather bought the property. Araucana Lodge is about an hour from Cali. Cali is the capital city of the state of Cauca Valley. And here's another superlative for you guys. The Cauca Valley, the state we are in, has a bird list of over 1,000 species. So it's 10% of the world's species, and in terms of terrestrial area, the Cauca Valley occupies 0.002% of the world's terrestrial territory. So 10% of the species and 0.002% of the world's territory. Okay. So, and Cali is actually one of the birdiest cities, I think the birdiest city on the planet. My friend Ruben Palacios, who got his PhD from Duke University in North Carolina, actually wrote a scientific paper figuring out how many species were in city limits. Granted, the municipal city limits of Cali extend up to 4,000 meters because they include the Farallones National Park, but he registered 559 species just within the municipal city limits. Okay, more pictures of the lodge. Very spacious rooms, great mattresses, hot water, Wi-Fi, very comfortable. We have 5 endemic species on the property. One of them is this grayish piculet, tiny, tiny little guy in the woodpecker family, one of the smallest woodpeckers alive, endemic to Colombia. And this is a male. You can see the red on his the yellow on his crown. for not being a very bright bird, I think it's still pretty attractive. This is Colombian chachalaca, also found on the property and endemic to Colombia. Apical flycatcher, another endemic that we can find on the property. And one of the things we really wanted to do as a family was to serve great food and to try to produce as much food as we can on the property using organically, or organic gardening. So during the pandemic was actually a good opportunity. We were shut down for a month. The Colombian government didn't allow hotels to operate for about a year. So this was a good opportunity for us to get the gardens going, improve in our gardening techniques, and it wasn't lost time. It was time we were able to use to work on the trails, the gardens. So it wasn't a bad place to be in the pandemic. A lot of our staff lives on site or very nearby, so they were able to come to work every day. So we kept busy. So we try to do as much farm to table as we can here. This is another species of hummingbird that visits the lodge, the blue-headed sapphire. Long-billed starthroat, another very nice hummingbird. A near endemic purple-throated wood star with a beautiful, this is a male with a beautiful purple throat. And this is the main common area at the lodge with a beautiful view of the Western Andes. Bar-crested antshrike, a near endemic that's also found on the property. This is the guy that's on our logo. And one of the reasons we decided to go with this guy is that he's pretty attractive, but when he sings, it sounds like somebody's laughing uncontrollably, and it's in its common name in Spanish is Batara carcajada, which means ant shrike that laughs uncontrollably. So we thought that would be a proper bird for our logo because we think as our property is somewhere where people can come and have a good time and enjoy the birds and eat good food. And before we get into some more eye candy for birds, I think we don't have too much to go. Um, just one of the things as a family when we started the lodge was, we really wanted it to be as sustainable as we could. So the four pillars of sustainability, where we wanted to base our decision making: environmental, economic, social, and cultural. Um, we try to do projects with the local school, local birding groups in training, in getting them equipment, in getting them birding guides. And, we're always open to kids coming to the lodge and learning about birds and supporting different birding festivals and different local guides. So that's our way of giving back to the community. It also is to our advantage that the local kids get interested in birding because we're going to need more bird guides in the future, and we hope they're local kids. And um, this is a really neat part about being involved with bird tourism for so many years in Colombia, is seeing lives change and people grow. And you know kids that were like 5 years old when I first visited their mom 15 years ago that are now studying biology and have become, the best bird guides in Colombia, working for the top birding tour companies in the world. So that's been a very nice part of this experience. Um, we Audubon's they did the southwestern Andes birding trail. So this was, I think, their third birding trail in Colombia, and my wife Vivian actually did it was a 1 year course where they were training people to become guides. They came and spent a couple days at the lodge, and it was a great opportunity to connect with people and connect with the people that are working with Audubon to to train these guides and develop these birding trails. In terms of economic sustainability, we try to, what we don't produce here, we try to purchase from neighbors. Um, you know, our store where we sell souvenirs, a lot of that comes from is made by local artists. So that's our way of supporting the local artists. Um, when we were building the lodge, we commissioned the artwork for the different rooms to be done by different local artists. So that was our way of supporting the local art scene. Um, you know, the the hammocks were made by people that had worked on the Northern Colombia Birding Trail, who have this, uh, make these beautiful hammocks. So the idea was to, you know, to build the lodge and put things in it that actually supported people and supported people's lives. In terms of environmental sustainability, we reutilize our rainwater. Um, we don't, we don't sell plastic water bottles. We have soap and shampoo dispensers in our bathrooms instead of little plastic amenities. I'm part of a nonprofit called Ecotonos, where 4 years ago we purchased 50 hectares of cloud forest right above the lodge. The idea is to protect that forest, and it's actually the source of the water for the local aqueduct. So not only are we protecting the forest, we're protecting the livelihood of the people around us, which includes our employees and also our guests, because the lodge gets its water from the local aqueduct, which gets its water from the Gustavo Catan Nature Preserve, which is owned by Ecotonos. And I'm a member of their board of directors. The idea with Ecotonos too is also to promote scientific studies. So during the pandemic, we kind of slowed down with things, but we just actually had our first meeting in a while this evening, right before this meeting. And we're going to start to do some scholarships for biology students in Cali to come do some research in the 50-hectare preserve. Okay, lastly, I want to show you guys some more eye candy and talk to you about the different areas you can bird around the lodge. We have great birding at the lodge, but also great birding within an hour and a half drive away. So you can easily stay 7 nights at the lodge and hit up these birding areas on day trips and kind of be based out of one point. This is the endemic multicolored tanager found at kilometer 18, one of the most beautiful tanagers, and it's also endemic to Colombia. My friend Javier owns La Florida Birding, which is a place he opens up his home for birders to come, and you're able to photograph this beautiful bird. It comes to the feeders. What's unique about this area in terms of ornithological history, the kilometer 18 area, was this was one of the first places in Colombia where bird surveys were done. In the 1900s, early 1900s, Frank Chapman, astonishing scientist, he was the curator for the National History Museum in New York, came to Colombia on boats through the Pacific Ocean, And their first place that they came to do studies and to gather specimens was Cali and the forest in the kilometer 18 area, the San Antonio forest. So this was the first of many expeditions. They did expeditions during, I think it was about 10 to 15 years, in 74 different localities in Colombia. They discovered 9 new species, 100 new subspecies, and took back about 16,000 specimens back to the American Museum of Natural History. So this gives us a lot of data on bird populations and bird numbers from over 100 years ago. So that's an important a very valuable tool in terms of conservation, because it lets us compare, when we do studies today, what has happened to the bird populations in the past 100 to 120 years. Some of the other birds you can find in kilometer 18 are saffron crowned tanager, steely vented hummingbird, again the multicolored tanager, green and black fruit eater, booted rackettail. We have several Andean cocklerock leks nearby. A lek is a place where males come to compete for females. It's a very interesting thing to see in real life. So I'm just going to talk about 2 more spots. I don't want to keep you up so late. We have the Anchicaya Valley. This is the old road that goes down into the port of Buenaventura. This is where Steve Hilty, he wrote the first Guide to the Birds of Colombia. He did his master's project in the 1970s in this area of Colombia, and ended up getting the idea to write this field guide because he was doing research in one of the birdiest places on earth. And he was one of the first persons to do, I think, bird tourism in the world. This was in the 70s. He'd get back to his buddies who he birded with in the US, and he'd say, hey, you guys come on down to Colombia, I'll set everything up, we'll do some birding here. So one of the first persons to do bird tourism. He now works for Victor Emmanuel Nature Tours, just came out with a new updated field guide to the birds of Colombia. And this guide was instrumental in getting a lot of people into birding, not only in Colombia, but in neighboring countries, because it was the only field guide available. So, young kids from Ecuador and Peru and Venezuela were using this guide as a tool, because there wasn't anything available for their countries at that time. Here in the Chicaya Valley, we find a place called Doña Dora's Birding. This is Doña Dora. Her place has become world famous. They have toucan barbets coming to feeders. Met her 15 years ago and started with a little shack on the side of the road selling empanadas. I gave her her first bird feeder and said, if you start feeding birds and birds come, eventually tourists will come and they'll pay you to get into your house. She didn't believe me, but she kept on it. Now, 3 generations of her family live and work at her place. Her son is an artist. He paints murals. The granddaughter works there, the other 2 sons. So a beautiful example of how bird tourism has changed lives. She goes and gives talks all around Colombia about her experience to kind of motivate people to do the same. Always a pleasure to go see Doña Dora. We donated some bird guides and some binoculars. This was right after the pandemic. You can see everybody's still wearing masks. to the local guides in the area to incentivize them to work hard at becoming better bird guides. Some of the species of doñadoras are rufous-throated tanager, orange-breasted fruit eater, golden-chested tanager, clubbed-wing manakin, gray and gold tanager. This is a spectacular place for tanagers. Scarlet and white tanager, toucan barbet, which is the star of the show at Doñadoras. Very easy to photograph on her property. Last place I want to talk about is San Cipriano. This is located in the Pacific lowlands. It's about at 300 meters in elevation, so totally different species that you're going to find up in the mountains. It's a town that's located on an abandoned railroad. There's no roads that go into this town. So anything that goes into the town has to get in there in these little contraptions called brujitas. Basically, it's the motorcycle attached to the wooden cart. You sit on that little bench and you go on a 20-minute ride through the rainforest with toucans and parrots flying around. And that's the only way to get in and out of the town of San Cipriano. It's 100% Afro-Colombian community. Very interesting in terms of culture, cuisine, food, and amazing birding. This is us, Jose, one of my star guides. Some of you that have been to Colombia, I'm sure know him, and Noah Stryker when he was trying to beat his world record for birding, number of birds seen in a year. Long-wattled umbrella bird. Rose-faced parrot is one of the targets there. Chocotrogon. And, oh yeah, lastly, another really neat spot that you can access for birding from the lodge is the Sonso Lagoon. This is located north of Cali in the Cauca Valley. Unfortunately, what was 100 years ago, a valley that was about 80% wetlands. This is the last remaining wetland in the entire valley. It's all been converted to sugarcane, which consumes a lot of water. You have to burn before you harvest and uses a lot of pesticides. So we have this little wetland gem that is protected by a local organization, and these are a male and a female spectacled parrotlets found at the lagoon. Here is my email. If anybody has any questions or is interested in visiting Colombia, chriscalonje@gmail.com. The lodge has a website, araucanalodge.com, and Colombia Birdwatch has a website, colombiabirdwatch.com. If anybody's interested, we set up custom tours, and we're also running a tour in January with the Golden Gate Bird Alliance. They changed their name. We're doing 2 back-to-back 8-day trips, 8 days at Araucana Lodge, and then 8 days in the Central Andes. And I think that's it.